Should you be staying at a Disneyland hotel your next visit to the Disneyland Resort? Well, that's kind of hopefully what we're going to try and figure out for you if you're planning your next visit to Disneyland. What's going on, everybody? I'm David, and this is our family's small shop, Mickey and Mandy. We are Disney adults that create custom bags, screen printed shirts, and handmade home decor inspired by everybody's favorite magical theme parks, and I would like to welcome all of you back to the next entry in our Disneyland series. And look, here's the thing. I know everybody wants to talk about what parks to go to, what rides to go on, what snacks to eat, what dining options are the best available, but here's the thing. Where you are staying from a hotel perspective, I think is the more important starting point when planning any Disney trip, because that is where the magic starts. That's going to be the more important question that we're going to be answering. And I think that's the case too when planning a visit to the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. So in this week's video, we're going to be breaking down some of the different lodging options for when you are going to the Disneyland Resort. We're going to be talking about the Disneyland specific hotels. These are the hotels that are on Disneyland property. We're also going to be digging into something called Good Neighbor hotels, and we're going to very briefly kind of dig into the hotels that are just generally around Anaheim, LA, and kind of what those options look like. But before we dig into the Disneyland hotels, everybody, again, if you haven't already, be sure you check out our family small shop, Mickey and Mandy. My mom makes some of the awesome handmade bags that you see behind me in my videos, like this Steamboat Mouse vinyl sling bag. She also makes this America's Captain backpack. This is another favorite of mine. But it's not just that. My sister and I, we get to create Disney Parks inspired screen printed shirts. Me and my dad, we get to make some of the home decor that you see behind me in my videos as well. I'm actually working on a couple pieces this week for an order, and I can't wait to show those off for you. So again, be sure you check us out. That's mickeyandmandy.com. All right, now let's pull on that yellow strap and get going, eh? All right, so getting back into Disneyland, we're going to be talking about the three main options of where you can stay from a hotel perspective during your next visit to the Disneyland Resort. We're going to be talking about Disneyland specific hotels. We're going to be talking about Good Neighbor hotels, and just in general, what other hotel options are in the general Anaheim, LA-ish area. Okay, so let's start talking about the Disneyland specific hotels. So there's only 3 hotels at the Disneyland Resort that are actually Disney's. And a big part of this is because there wasn't as much real estate or room to grow at Disneyland as there was for Disney World when Walt Disney was starting to plan that property and those parks and everything in between. So there's just the 3 hotels. There is the Disneyland Hotel, there is the Pixar Place Hotel, and Disney's Grand Californian Resort and Spa. Those are the 3 big ones, and we're going to be digging into each one specifically. I'm going to do my best to give you as much of a price point, and if you're more of a Disney World centered person like myself, I'm going to try and give this to you in Disney World terms as well. So let's jump in. So let's start off with the Disneyland Hotel. This is the original Disneyland Hotel. When the park opened and when they were starting to expand and adding in the monorails, this was the place to stay. And because of that, nowadays it has sort of that classic Disneyland fare that you see in some of the attraction posters as you enter the park, but obviously with those modern amenities that we love to see out of a Disney hotel. So it is themed to the lands, it is themed to that classic Disneyland. It's got the monorail pool. It is such an iconic resort, and it is I've never stayed there myself, but I have roamed about it. It is a really cool area of the Disneyland Resort. Now, price points for this do average out depending on party size and time of year, things like that. I have found that it averages out between like $500 to $650 a night. Again, this does depend on party size and the time of year that you're going, so just make sure that you keep that in mind. The next hotel at Disneyland that I'll talk about is the Pixar Place Hotel. I personally consider this to be the newest hotel in Disneyland's catalog, but this is more because it used to be the Paradise Place Hotel, but then it got refurbed to the Pixar. It has sort of this modern Pixar flair to it. I absolutely love the lobby because it has the chandelier with the sort of abstract versions of the more iconic Pixar characters. So I consider it to be newer because of the refurbishment, And I do like that it kind of ditched the old, seaside coastal carnival look of the Paradise Pier Hotel, and we're kind of leaning into this mid-century modern Pixar look that we've been kind of getting, it really seems like, out of like the Incredible movies or something like that. Now, in terms of a price point for this hotel, again, depending on party size, time of year that you're going, I have been finding that it averages between like $550 to $700. So it can be a little bit more expensive than the Disneyland hotel. It does seem like there's more room availability with the Pixar Place Hotel though, so just keep that in mind. And the last of the Disneyland hotels, but not the least by a long shot, is the Grand Californian Hotel Resort and Spa. And you really can't stress the grandness of this hotel enough. It might very well be like the example of Disney Parks hotel and customer service, at least in the continental United States. And in Disney World terminology, it would be like if Wilderness Lodge and Grand Floridian had the most beautiful version of a baby. And I mean, it's got that legendary Disney service. It's a hotel, it's a spa, it has its very own entrance into Disney's California Adventure. And it is one of the more beautiful hotels that Disney has. Now, keeping that in mind, it does have a bit of a price tag. So the lowest price point that I was finding was averaging in like $850. And it was really just going up from there. So for me personally, that's a hotel that I would visit. I don't know if it's one that I would stay at unless I won the lottery. If I win the lottery, then there will be signs and it's going to be me posting about my stay at Grand Californian. So there's that. The more expensive to be sure, but it's like that for a reason. So now that we've discussed the Disneyland hotels specifically, what they are, general-ish price points, about as close as I could get, let's talk about pros and cons of the Disneyland hotels and staying there. Because for me, it is different than staying at a hotel in Disney World, so let's talk about it. So pros of staying at a Disneyland resort, of course you do get that incredible Disney service and theming, and you are on property, and there is something to be said for that. But for me, the biggest cons are that there's not a lot of them. So the supply and demand of a Disney hotel is different in Disneyland as opposed to Disney World. There's just not that many of them, and because of that, the prices in general are going to be higher. I wish that for a Disneyland hotel you could break it down where Disneyland is like a value and the Pixar Place is more like a moderate, whereas Grand Californian is more like a deluxe. I wish that was the case, but unfortunately they're just in general going to be expensive hotel stays because there's not a lot of them, as opposed to Disney World, there's like 30 of them. So if you're planning your visit to the Disneyland Resort and the price of where you are staying is important to you, if you are doing Disneyland on a budget, maybe don't consider staying at a Disneyland hotel. But there are other options, and we're going to go through those now. We're going to start off with the Good Neighbor hotels. Now, Good Neighbor hotels, although they aren't Disney's hotels specifically, these are Disney approved hotels, at least according to Disneyland.com. These are the ones that get the big glove thumbs up from the mouse. So, bigger differences between booking a Good Neighbor versus booking Disneyland. The Disneyland hotels are on property. The Good Neighbor hotels are close to property, either a very short walk or a very short drive. So those are things to keep in mind. Because these aren't Disney hotels, and also because there are more of them, the price points are going to be a little bit lower. So that is another one to consider when planning your trip and where you're going to be staying. The other thing to keep in mind with the Good Neighbor hotels is that you are able to book them on Disney World, almost said Disney World, the Disneyland's website, but you can also book the Good Neighbor hotels in the form of a package. So you're not paying by the night, you're paying by the booking, which again, super cool and something to consider. And the other thing that's really cool about the Good Neighbor hotels is that since these do get the glove thumbs up from the mouse, you're more than likely going to be getting a very specific Disney level of service. You might not be getting that Disney service specifically. They might not say welcome home when you walk into the hotel, but these are going to be very friendly individuals that are well versed in hospitality and customer service, and they are going to be doing everything in their power to make sure that you have a truly wonderful experience at Disneyland. And before we get into the last of the lodging options during your next visit to Disneyland, just another very quick reminder, make sure you check out our family small shop, mickeyandmandy.com, to show off a couple other bags here. My mom, she makes these awesome handmade customizable bags. This is a lunch tote that I actually use every Wednesday. I make dinner for me and my wife, and we go to trivia, and it stays nice and warm inside of this bag. And then she also makes these awesome belt bags. These are nice and sturdy. This is another one that my wife uses. It's not floppy like a fanny pack. She keeps her magic band puck actually attached to this. It's super cute. Cannot recommend the custom bags enough. But again, me and my sister, we get to design Disney parks inspired screen printed shirts. And me and my dad, we get to make some of the home decor that you see behind me in our videos. So make sure you check us out. That's mickeyandmandy.com. And just more plugins here, very, very quick, I promise. Make sure you subscribe over here to our YouTube so that way you don't miss out on more additions to our Disneyland series, but we're also going to be showing you some behind the scenes looks and how we make some of the awesome handmade products on our shop. I got some home decor videos coming up. I got some behind the scenes clips of my mom, Mandy at the Mickey and Mandy, making some of these custom bags. You don't want to miss out on that, and make sure you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. This is where we post a lot of our new product drops, the different sales that we've got going on, and this is where you're going to be finding all of our ready to ship information, because we do weekly ready to ship drops every Saturday. So subscribe here, follow us over there, and we'll have a great time. Now on with the show. I'll be brief because this last part of where to stay when you're planning your next visit to Disneyland is a little bit more general. These are just very briefly discussing other hotel options in the Anaheim, LA, Southern California-ish area. Now, obviously, these are going to be hotels that are not affiliated with Disney or Disneyland in any way, shape, or form, but these are going to be hotels that are more in, I don't know, LA or Huntington Beach, places like that. So just kind of give you an idea of what sort of hotel I'm talking about here. Back in 2024, during our last visit to Disneyland and our last visit to Southern California, we went out there for a friend's wedding. And the priority was spending time with our friends and seeing Southern California and going to our friend's wedding. And it was an absolute blast, but we went with a Disney adult. So obviously Disneyland was going to be a pit stop. So what we did was we found a hotel in Huntington Beach, but still a very quick as you could possibly make it in LA traffic. But it was a pretty quick, like 30-minute drive to the Disneyland Resort. So even though we were off property and we didn't really get any of the benefits of staying at a Disney hotel, it was cheaper than staying at a Good Neighbors hotel. It was cheaper than staying at a Disneyland hotel. But also, we were afforded the opportunity to get to see more of Southern California. There were folks in our friend group that they explored all over LA. They made a whole to-do of it, and some of them went, I think it was to San Diego at some point. So if you are planning on doing other stuff in Southern California that isn't just Disneyland, keep that in mind, because maybe staying at just one of these other hotels, maybe on the coast or in one of these other different cities that you want to check out, maybe that's something to keep in mind. I'm trying to remember. I think we stayed at a Holiday Inn, but I'll be real. I don't holistically remember, so that's on me. So let's get back to the original question. Should you stay at a Disneyland hotel? This is kind of a cop-out answer, but I'm going to take it anyway. It depends. And I know that's not necessarily an answer that maybe some of you are wanting to hear, but hear me out. It does legitimately depend on you and your budget and what your plans are for your vacation and your specific situation. So if you're somebody who's planning a trip to Disneyland and you only want to go to Disneyland, it's your first trip going, or it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip and you don't know if you're going to be going back, then absolutely pull the trigger and stay at a Disneyland hotel. I was a big fan of the look and feel of Pixar Place, but the Disneyland Hotel is also on the cheaper-ish side and still looks like a lot of fun. But if the price tag is important to you and you're still really only planning on doing Disneyland, then maybe consider one of the Good Neighbor hotels. Whereas if you're planning on doing more in Southern California, you want to go to Huntington Beach, you want to go to San Diego, the Walk of Fame, whatever it is that you want to do, even if you want to go to Universal, if you got other plans that aren't Disneyland during your trip to California, then maybe don't do a Disneyland hotel or Good Neighbors. Pick something that's maybe a more central point or something that is during your last stop during your trip to California. Just keep that in mind. I would say those are the two big things to keep in mind when trying to figure out, should you stay at a Disneyland hotel? Are you only going to Disneyland? Is this a once in a lifetime trip, or are you planning on doing other stuff in California? So I hope that was helpful. I know it wasn't as exciting as talking about rides and food and things like that, but that's why you should subscribe, because the next few entries of our Disneyland series are going to be talking about some of my must-do experiences at Disneyland Park and Disney California Adventure. I'm going to kind of do a play-by-play of my rope drop strategy. We're going to be talking about some of my favorite dining and snacks and things like that at Disneyland. So you don't want to miss out on that. Make sure you subscribe. But more importantly, everybody, and as always, we thank you so much for watching, and we will see you real soon.